do have a small prize to encourage you to ask the first 3 questions. So I'm just going to throw it open. Oh, we have a question. Wow, and he has a microphone already. Stand up and tell us who you are. Welcome. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm Aguinaldo from Ortigas and Company, and we have a vacancy for an HR. No, thanks. My question is for Peter. I don't know, because I'm a person who doesn't play games on my mobile device. I grew up not playing games. So, well, I'm not a team player. So there.
Are you in sports? Are you engaged?
I don't know. I'm just challenging the paradigm. Does this work for loners?
Does this work for
the gamification concept? Does it work for people who are loners, who are conceptual, who are creative types, or I don't know? Does it have limitations?
Well, my quick answer is yes. When you read the 8 core drives in the book, it really describes the human being, right? It talks about why games work. And they're, again, different games, right? The connotation when we say, oh, mobile games, maybe that's the paradigm. But sports are games. Betting, that's a game. Chess is a game. Playing with the kids at the house is a game. And then there are different elements. And the framework explains why do they resonate with us so much, right? And maybe there's a person who doesn't resonate with each. But I think it was a study. You'll see that the framework was a study. So the 8 really was a study, and he really brought it down to 8 after a lot of research. So I think for most human beings, it would apply.
Just a follow-up question, sorry. Are you saying that having a fixed award loses its effectivity? And so, do we need to change the award or the reward?
What do you mean, sir, when you say a fixed award?
Most companies would have their Model Employee of the Year award. So, are you saying that having it annually would lose its attractiveness, or do we keep it fresh by changing the reward attached?
It's really hard to shoot from the hip without knowing the culture, the values, how the system was implemented, how the system was communicated. So it's really, really very hard to shoot from the hip. I'd really have to understand the context. But fixed awards, variable awards, all of them I think have their places. How you do it in your organization, meaning there's now strategy that's involved, which utilizes your knowledge of gamification, your knowledge of your firm, your knowledge of the different motivational tactics and theories. In crafting that strategy, that's what's important. So I'm very uncomfortable shooting from them saying, fixed awards are soft, right? That's not true. There's a role for these things, but it's the how. It's really the how.
I know Andrew would like to comment on your question as well.
Yeah, no, actually it's not. If I may, I'd like to pick up on that. Peter, I'd like to ask you, when you look at all of the anonymized data that you're grabbing, 40,000, 50,000 engagements, are you seeing differences by generational type or by industry? Are there differences that you see in the data?
I don't think we've cut the data that well, that way yet. So it'll be good if we cut it and then see. Because this is the first time that we've actually accumulated the data and presented it. So I was a bit nervous to see how the data would say, but that's a great, I think, thing for us to look at. The cut we have now is, actually we see the behavior of performers. Because if you think about it, the guys who get the awards, those are the guys who are performing and hitting their metrics. So this is the behavior of the guys in your organization that are actually hitting and using the platform. So that's the cut I'm familiar with. It'll be interesting to go down to demographics.
And the thing that I find, anybody that brings up and talks about data and capturing data, the most exciting thing about it is that it shifts what we all do from being you know, that's just as we ought to do that, or it's a good community thing to do, or to actually making it a hard business metric to be able to show how people in the organization are building business. It's a strategic business value, and everybody's obsessed by data these days, so it's brilliant to capture that. I think the thing that you said as well, Peter, is that there is no one, like, oh, that's it, that's the tick box. It's like, you know, how do we now, for those outliers that are there, they're like, oh, I hate gamification. At least you'll know, so then you think, okay, how do we talk to with the bulletin board? How do you talk to those people differently?
Okay.
But that's a hugely important point. You have to make sure that you measure. Because if you don't measure your campaigns and you don't measure how effective they were, you don't have the tools, you have to set those up. Otherwise, you're not going to grow. You're not going to learn.
Okay, I think we can just leave them chatting to themselves. It would be quite interesting. But I noticed that a lady over there has a microphone.
Wait.
Maybe stand up and ask.
Sarah, because we kind of gamified this Q&A, I'd like to give you a prize because it's the first one you asked the question. Your name, sir?
Yeah, first prize.
Okay. We're giving you this card game. This is recently released by our friends at Balanga Entertainment. It's a card game. Thank you for your question.
Good job. So second
Now we're
question.
going to rush to the mic.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Rexy from SM Development Corporation. My question is, like, because we're mostly HR here, and as HR, usually the budget gets cut first. I mean, it's very hard to sell. So, like, here, we got excited. All of us got excited. This is very new, and we see the value. But how do we sell this to our bosses, to the decision makers who would be the one investing? So aside from, like, when I actually justify for my existence here, coming in here, it's really more of the population, like 60% millennials, and this is something new. But it's another thing to actually go back to my boss now and say, I think we have to bring this here. I think we have to do this. So what's your advice to me on how I can, like, open the minds of management to actually consider this in the company?
Decals ready.
I think if you own a business, you look at the bottom line. And the bottom line is that there's an increase in performance, there's an increase in engagement, and in the examples that Peter gave, it's an increase in sales. If you can sell that, which I don't think is a hard sell, you're going to make more money. Your company is going to be happier. And the studies are out there. An unhappy business is not going to survive. You know, Harvard Business Review just came out with something recently really about happiness in the workplace and engagement. So I would show that, show the hard numbers, show the business case for it. But also with the caveat that you can't really give promises because it's really an experimental thing. It's something that does take a lot of investment in terms of time, figuring out what's the right strategy, what is the problem that you want to solve, what's the background conversation, like something I mentioned earlier. So if you don't have that, and you don't explain what that real problem is, and how you're going to solve it with this, then it's all moot. It's just another great trend or tool. And that's exactly what Andrew was saying. It's useless if you don't have, the right strategy or motivation behind it.
I think I understand where you're coming from, because of course this is something new. And most of the times management will start to ask you, okay, what profit do you see in this one? So this is the investment, and what profit will you be gaining from this? Well, that's the word, that's the magic of it all. Investment. You are investing in people. But to propose it, I would suggest, in my part, you start, yes, with the numbers that are present, that are on hand. Show them a study. It's like in project management or in business analysis, you are actually answering a business need. So you start first with the business need. What is the need of your company? It is to what? To engage people? Is it to diminish the mortality rate of your people? Is it to increase profit? From that need now, you have to come up with a proposed solution. And this is the solution that you're thinking of, supported by research. Then you do a very short P&L, profit and loss, no, when you present it. It's like you're presenting portfolio. It's like in project management, you're presenting a project proposal. So when you propose it to management, you have to be ready to have your numbers, and you have to be ready to show them the profit in it. It should come out that there is a profit in it, whether it be a short-term or a long-term profit. But mostly, the way that I see it is yes, very much. Emotions of the people, they will stay in your company. And to keep an employee right now, to find a new employee with the skills that he was able to garner within the corporation is much more expensive than retaining and increasing the knowledge of your present employees, and that is what you're doing.
Does any other panel? Peter's very quiet, but Andrew, I think.
Yeah, Andrew's not.
Are we on?
Yeah, a couple other things to go with that. Pilot. So you don't have to change the whole organization. Just show that you will do a pilot, get proof of concept for that, and scale out. So CEOs will buy into, or people will buy into a smaller risk around that. Secondly, make sure you're in the meetings. So you haven't got meetings taking place and everybody decides what they've got to do and then, oh, let's invite HR in. So you've got to be in those meetings and have a voice that's heard. And you've got to make sure that the monkey isn't on your back, because you can't put the organization right, only the senior leadership of the company can. You are enabling them. It's their responsibility to be able to drive change.
Thank you, Peter.
I find that the trick really, so I was in HR, that was my problem. How do I get budget or this or that? And I find it really depends on the person you're asking money or support from. You have to know what the language is of that person. If it's finance, then you talk about bottom line. If the person is more traditional, never use the word gamification. You might be better served using incentives or, but gamification for a traditional-minded sort of guy probably won't work. So know your audience.
Brian, here's our third question. We have someone here for the next one, but we have the third one there. Is it David or is it? Oh, this one first. Like, yeah. Hi. Hi. Yeah. All right. So this question is for any one of our panelists. The main concern, I think, sorry, I'm Jeje from Ayala Automotive. So the main problem that I think, yes, the main problem I think that our company will be facing if we will gamify HR. I mean, HR very prepared, gusto ni HR mag-gamify, diba? But then there's a big chunk of employees who do not have the access to the technology. Say for example, we want to use that platform. So gusto namin may reward system, ganyan. However, if there's a bunch of people who we want to engage also, of course we want 100% engagement, but then again they don't have access to that technology. Given the example, our technicians. Of course we also want to engage our technicians, but they don't have the tools for it. They don't have access to computers because all they have are their toolkits. What alternatives can you propose so we can also engage them and gamify the rewards and recognition system of the company?
Is this more of the technology base or the board game base? Technology base.
Can be both, because just to emphasize engagement for all associates, be the technician level or up to the management level.
If I were to, of course they have their own platforms, but in particular with virtual reality, no matter what equipment you're using, whether you're using your smartphone, whether you're using a laptop, whether it is the whole set that is transported into your office, everyone can participate in their own way also. So they can simply log on using their mobile devices and take a look at what's happening. But in reality, what I would propose is a blended platform that encompasses all medias, whether it be technology-based, whether it be social-based, whether it's a board game, but centering on one universal theme. And also being able to address the gaps that are needed within your corporation. Everyone can participate. It doesn't matter how, whether they're using technology, whether they're using their social platforms. The secret is customization. Finding out what really are the needs within your corporation, what are the limits, what are the parameters that we can work on, and being creators of this genre of training and people management, we will come up with a solution.
Andrew, you have a microphone. Please.
Two answers from me. First is, again, as was mentioned, I think you can have a creative way of using what you have and gamifying the process. That's first thing. There's a way to do it, period. Depending on, you can use what you have, bulletin board, some things that are physical. But the second part is, a year ago, I encountered a new problem. My household help asked me for the Wi-Fi password at home. That, I didn't know how to react because suddenly I was weighing the pros and cons of it. But all of them had smartphones. And all of them, the justification was, I wanted to use Viber or Facebook to communicate with my relatives in the province. So I gave them the Wi-Fi password. I just had to put some rules in after like taking pictures of my kids and putting it on their Facebook and stuff like that. But so I had we have social media guidelines in the house. But my point is this: my household help, they're probably making less money than your technicians, and they have access to smartphones. So actually, the problem is they will have the technology already. That's the amazing thing about our world today, is that everyone has access to a smartphone. 3,000, 2,000, 3,000 bucks, and they will actually use, it's actually a priority for them. The problem would be now Wi-Fi access, right? So, but I think technology is there.
So maybe just to jump in, if you remember what I was saying earlier, look at how big the table is. Because the environment and the circumstance that you have will be unique. So in the same way that Bam was talking about creating a blended platform, that might make the most sense. And again, constraint breeds creativity. So you think, these are my limitations. There's no Wi-Fi, but there's text messaging. You know, you could create text blasts. You can maybe even automate those if you find the right developer to do that, if that's something you want to go through. So there really is lots of ways to go about it, provided you know exactly what are those constraints. I'd say that's why I always try to promote entrepreneurial mindset. Approach it like an entrepreneur. Like, how am I going to solve this problem and these are the materials that I have.
I just want to put in, this gamification, this isn't really like the paradigm, the scientific ontology of Ernest Cline's Ready Player One. Okay, that's not it. This is more of Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World. This is a new world that we have to boldly go to. Okay, so it isn't something that is not going to be here. It is here. So it is up to us really to make the most use of what we have and bring our teams not only to the 21st century, but beyond that one.
Maybe just to jump back to something Peter said earlier about the investment into the campaign. That's one thing you have to look at. So, like I mentioned, I ran a Kickstarter campaign. Kickstarter requires you to actually have, number one, a Kickstarter account, then a credit card. And if you don't know what Kickstarter is, you have to find out what Kickstarter is. One of the funny things about the data, and that's why I love the comment on measurement. Measurement's very important no matter what you're doing. We found out that almost 60%, 80% were first-time backers for us. So they never used Kickstarter before. And one big thing that we had to adjust when we were running our campaign was we had to come up with infographics of step 1, log in to Kickstarter. Step 2, you need an email address. Step 3, you need a credit card. If you don't have a credit card, you have PayMaya. So looking at your market, which is people who might not have the same access or maybe even familiarity with the tools, even if they have the smartphone, then that's a part of the campaign, a big part of the offline aspect that you're going to be creating.
There will be a help campaign. We are here to help.
Okay, do we have the next question? Brave soul. I think David wanted there. David over there. You have a microphone.
Hello.
Hi, you have a
Hi,
microphone.
I'm David from Feel Good. I'm not in real estate or HR, so I have a question. It sounds like everything has been still kind of evaluating from the top down. In my company, I'm trying to encourage my managers to be coaches, mentors. But the best way to evaluate that, as far as I'm concerned, is bottom-up evaluations. So how can this gamification be used to encourage lower-level employees to evaluate their managers without it being sip-sip or without favoritism or whatever? Because on the flip side, there's what Andrew said, people don't want to speak up. And on the other side of that is are they just brown-nosing?
So how do we encourage from the bottom up evaluation as well?
Well, I'm just trying to think here. If you create an environment, that equal onus thing when we talked of, I mean, there has to be purpose and reason why I'm giving feedback at whatever level it's coming from. So if I'm an employee in the organization, there is a responsibility for the manager and for the leadership of the company to create the environment where people can see that they draw personal benefit from giving that feedback. And it's not like, I'm brown-nosing or I'm trying to usurp over everybody else, and that there is collective benefit from it. And I'm thinking of different things that we've done in the past where you will have very simply in team structures, and again, I'm getting a few details here, but 7 cornerstones of a high-performance team, for example. And you can have either the online version of it, where I press a button on my phone, we will stand in a group, and we will have a stone, and each one of the stones, so it's addressing your low technology or non-access technology, and there is the opportunity for us all to have a point of view by holding out a stone, a coloured stone, that relates back to the 7 cornerstones of leadership. So it's encouraging, it's creating a safe environment. So it's not me trying to get one up over anybody else that's in my group, but I realize I have a voice. You are creating an opportunity for me to have that voice and not embarrass myself, but also I have a responsibility to everybody else in the team to give my feedback. So that's from a bottom-up way of creating that works. So but it's, first of all, why are you giving feedback in the first place? 30 seconds and I'll hand over. I was talking with a company the other day saying, oh, Andrew, we've moved from the annual appraisal to now monthly feedbacks. The annual appraisal doesn't work anymore. And I said, they're great. So how do those 12 feedback sessions link together? I hadn't thought of that. And it's like, as we all know in this room, most people don't do appraisals because the appraiser doesn't know how to give good feedback because they've never really been trained on it. The appraisee absolutely dreads it because it's like the Spanish Inquisition. And all they've done by moving from the annual appraisal to monthly feedbacks was they multiplied that agony by 12. Because there was no purpose and no value of it. This is where we're moving to collectively. I'll help you with this. You want to achieve this. So anything on feedback here, I've got to understand what the purpose of it is and what value I get from it. And then I'll be on board. Then I'll want to do it. I'll want to participate, I think.
Well, first and foremost, I am sure that as an OD practitioner, you are familiar with the balanced scorecard approach. Right? Okay. So, the balanced scorecard approach, you start with a goal in mind. What what are the strategic goals of a corporation for this, let's say, fiscal year or calendar year 2018? Then you have to set down your objectives. Now, part of those objectives, I am sure, is to increase the performance of a company. And increasing the performance of the company is not dependent only on top management. It is also dependent on all the members. Therefore, you should be doing a 360-degree evaluation. Meaning to say that not only will I evaluate you, but I will also evaluate myself, and the people that I am leading will also evaluate me. Because we have a common goal in mind. And for us to be able to accomplish that goal, we should all be performing together. Just like what was mentioned, you have to have first a purpose of that evaluation. Why are we evaluating the other person? Is it to to enable him to perform better? Or is it simply to get back at him because of the bad evaluation that he gave me? So the purpose has to be established first. The goal and the objectives have to be absorbed by the corporation. It has to be their way of life. They have to breathe it. They have to live it and know where they are going to. Because without that goal, without that purpose, they will keep on asking you, why do I need to be evaluated? Why do I need to evaluate? From there on, everything will flow smoothly as long as you establish where they're going to.
Decal's going first.
So maybe it's a slippery slope. Because if you start incentivizing evaluations, people might just be filling them up just to get the points. I'd say much like...
Not to incentivize the evaluator, but to get the reward for the manager that's being evaluated. So hit.
I understand, but then again, a lot of the times it's hard when it comes to evaluations. Because there might be different motivations behind it. And like what Andrew was talking about, I think it really is about environment and culture. If you create a certain level or a certain type of culture within the company, then that kind of feedback will just be normal. I feel sometimes HR might not be necessarily equipped to do that because you're a part of the company. And sometimes it actually is more appropriate to get a third party who can pull it out of people and make them speak straight. Because a lot of the times if the culture is built up already and the HR is reading the evaluations and you see these people every day, there is that little thing subconsciously, it's like, oh, they're reading my evaluations. That's why sometimes, and I don't know again, situation to situation, sometimes bringing a third party in maybe once a year to really look in and dig deep.
Always, not sometimes.
To really get the straight talk out. Because, yeah, having a third party who's neutral, who's not going to take sides, who's not particularly speaking for the company, but is also managing all of the stakeholders, then that's what works.
Exactly what you do is
So is there a level
Peter,
at which...
I think you had something to say for that question.
Sorry, is there a level then at which the gamification stops? Like it doesn't go to the C-suite, doesn't go past VP? I mean, where does it go?
So is gamification valid for entry level up to C-level?
I guess it depends on whatever problem you're solving. And like I said, it's very case to case. You have to test it. And like one of the examples was pilot it. Then you see the data, you look and measure and see what exactly is going on. And then adjust from there. And see, it's like running little experiments. If this experiment works, okay, then let's continue it. If another experiment doesn't work, then you go for it. And that's really up to you how you have to really test and see if you could get the buy-in of the people involved, including the people you're saying from the bottom.
Okay. You have a...
Yeah, I was just going to, on that, and it's, so chances are, more traditional behaviour, traditional thinking, seniority of age and title status, an individual will be, in the current business environment, less open to gamification, experiential learning. I mean, we've done things before where sort of almost begrudgingly the CEO has said, okay, yes, all right, we'll do this then. And I've had situations where senior leaders have kind of, it's just ridiculous, and sort of disengaged. But then, because it's been so clever and so right and positioned so accurately in the company, they just kind of like, I've literally had people with their backs turned, then turn around and become the biggest advocates in doing it, then taking control of, you know, what the team, what they're doing. So it comes back to how relevant. I'm not going to do something juvenile, and again, my age stops me from doing that, or with some people it does, it doesn't with me. But if it's if I can see the relevance of it, if it's intellectually right, and I can see the value of it, then as a CEO leadership, then I will get involved, because I'm smart enough to know, actually, this is going to be good for my company. I'm going to get more out of the people who are coming to the company every day. So it's a danger. You can't have a cut-off in any way, but it's got to be relevant, and it has to link back to the benefit to the business. Otherwise, it's just, you know, otherwise I'm not going to waste my time on it.
I'll just add to this, I'm sorry. Yes, I agree, the bottom line. Well, that is the essence of a business, to profit. As long as the profit is seen at the end. But you can customize the games. You can customize it to be for, let's say, a younger audience, or you can even customize it to appeal to, let's say, my age, right? Or even older. It's all dependent on how you study, like what I was mentioning a while ago. Everything to do with stakeholder management.
Okay, next question. Where's our next question? Over there?
Hi, I'm Vicky from Light Rail Manila. One of our concerns right now in our organization is the transfer of knowledge. Because most of the employees that we have are from LRDA, who are 50 to 60 years old. So actually we're exploring into, well, we don't have the budget. We're just exploring, maybe in the future, for virtual reality. Let's say train driver simulation, or let's say for technicians. Because I had that simulation earlier. But I'm thinking, like, how do you do it? What will be the process, if ever?
Process, again. We're talking about soft skills or technical?
Technical skills, actually, because we want it to be consistent.
Yes,
So,
right. You might be surprised, you were talking about 50 to 60 years old. We did a study, and surprisingly, the generation who is now from 40 to 50 plus are so digitized. They are the ones who, in the cusp of technology, when gaming was first started, they were the ones who embraced it wholeheartedly. And therefore, to be in that environment, how would you start? Okay. For soft skills training, it's already there. We already have the programs in place. All you need to do is just call us up, or corporations like ours, and everything is set up. Okay. We do the TNA first, the training needs analysis. We find out the gaps, what are the gaps, and then from there, we choose the programs in agreement with you that would fill in the gaps of your workforce. Now for technical training, that's another thing. We first find out what medium is most receptive to your team or employees. No? If they are more receptive in a fully game on technical VRT, no, then we create that one. But if they are more of the traditional type, wherein they say, I'm sure, my parents, they love watching 3D movies. Why? Because it immerses them in another world. They want those new worlds. So if this is the type of people that we are going to address, then we create a 360 environment of the trainer talking there, still with PowerPoint slides, but the PowerPoint slides are augmented by, let's say, a role-playing thing that somebody is, if it is a manufacturing company, somebody is repairing something. It's all dependent, but it is customizable and doable right now, right here. Everything is ready.
Maybe you need to talk afterwards. Next question. I think over there. Do you have the microphone? Let's have a question that everyone can have an opinion. Just to make it more challenging for you.
Okay, hi. I'm Sandeep from Pricewaterhouse. I've been just picking up on a question that everyone has been trying to raise, or like series of questions. Started with how do we get a financier for our project, and then what can we do using gamification? In your experience, what would be the lowest hanging fruit to start gamification with? Am I audible at this stage?
Where would you start gamification?
Yeah.
What level?
What organizational function could be the lowest hanging fruit to start
Organizational
gamification
function.
with?
I have a database answer. So a lot of our clients are incentivized. So when we come in as a consulting firm, as a technology provider, and we ask them, sometimes they don't go all in. They won't go put all in like sales incentives. An easy sort of project that a lot of companies gamify is employee referrals. You can have a leaderboard that's physical in the rooms. You can have the app, and then you can have people submit their timestamps, and then when the person they referred gets regularized, they get a prize. That's a very easy, functional sort of project that you can gamify. And then from there, a lot of our clients expand that award list.
Maybe look at a problem that piques the interest of whoever stakeholder you're talking to, who might be the decision maker with the money. If that problem speaks to them, then maybe they would be more inclined if you could solve it, even in a small way. I would also look at the resources that you have that don't cost money, and then see how that fits into solving that problem. So that might be the easiest way to look at it as a low-hanging fruit. Look at, like, again, who are you speaking to? What are they most interested about? If they keep on complaining about people showing up late, maybe that's the thing that will open the door for bigger projects.
Maybe, Andrew, you can balance from when you were in business and now in training. What would your experience be there? Where to start?
I wouldn't ask that question, to be honest, because I think there is such a danger that we go off down a rabbit hole, and it's the wrong one to go down. And I am amazed at how, if from a marketing sense, business sense, we'd always look at the customer journey, map the customer journey, look at friction points along the customer journey, where does that break down, and then you come up with the answer, whether it's above the line, below the line, PR, a banner campaign, social media, whatever it is. And for some reason, in HR and employee engagement, we don't do that. And so I would really, for everybody here, so going right back to the lady who's saying, how do I get the attention of my CEO? Map the employee journey in your organization, different employee journeys, and show where it breaks down, and when it breaks down, show how it's costing the company money, and then decide whether it's VR, or whether it's gamification, or whether it's a bulletin board, or whether it's a kick up the arse, or whatever it is. But it's like where does that journey break down, and why is that behaviour happening, and why important? Because here's the other thing again: scan all of the non-ideal behaviours of employees across the room. You'll have a million of them. You'll never get the money to address them all. So it's what are the ones that are mission critical, that are costing the company most money, that deserve to be addressed, that are fundamental to the cultural integrity and strength of the organisation, that must be put right as an imperative.
Next question. Wow, these are interesting questions. We have a question down here, and then we have one at the back. So one here.
Hi, my name is Leah from PS Bank. First, I want to say thank you. It has been a great experience. I've learned so much today. My question is, for the past few hours, you've mentioned and you've clearly explained to us the value of gamification, right? But are there instances wherein gamification may not be applicable, or when is gamification not applicable? Because what I'm afraid of is that since we've learned so much and we're so excited to share the learning, that we'll just go back to our office and then just gamify everything. We wouldn't want that as well. So we just want to know exactly when, if there are really instances that we should not be applying gamification.
Thank you. There's 2 microphones on the table. Who's going to reach first? Come on, Peter. Come on, be brave.
Again, you can't be shooting from the hip, right? So and I think the answer was bit by bit also echoed in the previous answers, right? You have to go back to purpose. You have to go back to strategy. You have to go back to what the company really wants. And then try to see what the priorities are. You have to take a look at the culture of your guys. If you're an OD practitioner, then this makes sense, right? If you're a doctor, the medication has to match what the illness is. So you have to diagnose. And I think that's what we do as practitioners. We diagnose first. So again, gamification is a tool. We have to understand first what's wrong, and then come up with the right diagnosis. And then that's the only time that you take a look at the tools.
I think you have to start with answering what is the culture of my company. So let's say, for example, not only the culture, but also the average age. Although games can be played by all levels and all ages now. But then from there, you find out then if this certain age group, if this certain age group skills can be enhanced through this one, then you put it on. But it all boils down to what is the business need. Okay? From that end, will gamification address and be able to fill in the gaps? If it will, then that is where you put it in. But it's very hard to answer that one without really studying the corporation and the culture of the company.
And I think they're in agreement. We have time for one last question at the end before we move into...
1, 2, 3. Mine's not really a question. It's kind of taking some of the things that have come from the floor today and some of the things from our lovely 4 people up there. Every one of you in some way has talked about the purpose. What is the purpose of the training? All right? And each one of them has used either purpose or culture or something like that. So they're all very clear where we're going. But I also hear from the floor a lot of people saying that we don't get the budget. Now, I was never in HR and I was never in recruiting. I was actually running a company or various companies. And I found the freakiest thing was my HR department or my training department never came to me and said, I think we need to do this. I had to come up with the ideas, go to them and say, go and find somebody to make this happen. So the challenge to you guys today, who's in charge of HR in their companies here? Hands up? Okay, quite a lot of you. I think you have to be more proactive. You have to think, when does your company set the budget for next year? You have to then put a plan into place so you can go to them and say, look, we need this kind of money to do some more training next year. And you then start selling that idea to your CEO, because quite honestly, most CEOs are bloody stupid. They pay lots of money to sit there and actually achieve nothing. So you've got to do it at your level and make it happen. You've got to go there and say, look, this is what I think we're going to do next year. The purpose for this is this, blah, blah, blah. And then fight for that money. Then you'll be able to get these guys down, or anybody else that you want, for that particular purpose. So set it up now. Don't wait until halfway through next year and then go and say we need a budget, because I promise you, as the CEO, I will turn around and say no. Because I've budgeted for the year. I haven't got time to dig into something else and come back again with another budget. So hit them now. When is your budget? Now. Now. You go to them now. and you say, I need this budget for next year, and this is what I plan to achieve with it. Because it's no point just your CEO saying, well, we don't have the money at the moment. Because if the company's successful, you need to build on it, right? Coca-Cola spends a fortune every year reselling its brand, its brand, its brand. But if your company's failing, you also need to release a budget to improve it. So I suggest that the HR people, the training people in this room, you make up your minds now what you need for next year and go and sell it to your CEOs, your managers, whatever. And then get these guys.
Okay, so HR you have to turn into salespeople and also P&L managers. So I'm going to allow Brian to ask the final question, because that wasn't a question, that was a cheat. I'm going to ask Brian to ask the final question, because he started us off this morning, so let's have this question.
Okay. So this is also kind of a question in me. Facilitating games, and as a gamer, I know that gamification is great when you're winning. But what happens when you're losing? What kind of behavior or what kind of mental model to create to people when you lose? Would gamification help that? Sorry for the difficult question.
Very exciting question.
Context. So maybe in the context of like something that Andrew did, which is a training program to look at team building, you use the losing moments to create coachable moments. This is something I always say with Upstart. There is no wrong way of playing it. You can fail miserably, go bankrupt, and you can still learn something from it. And that's in the context of a learning game. But when you're talking about programs and incentives, you have to start looking again in that push and pull. Is it too challenging? Is there something that's not motivating them and that's why they're losing? And then you might need to adjust based on the data that you have. Because that means that's another sector of your employees or your customers that are not being engaged for some reason or another.
Promise it'll be a quick one. Heart, head, hands, harvest. So if I win your heart, to be open to take the experience, and because I'm not going to lose my job, because you haven't embarrassed me in front of everyone, but I personally I've realized, oh wow, there was something that I can take away from what just happened there. You win my heart, my conviction to be open to knowledge, head, to applying that knowledge into skills, hands, and then the results that the company wants. I get paid more, we do a better job, I can get more achieved in less time. How do I harvest on that? Heart, head, hands, harvest. So you got to win the heart first of all of people, and then it's fine. I don't mind that I died in the jungle.
Quick anecdote. When I used to teach kids and run children's parties, it was interesting because you notice in children's parties, and a lot of you have already been there seeing kids play, when they lose, a lot of the times why they're disappointed is because they don't get to finish the game. It's like, oh, we have a winner, and then it stops, and then everyone, oh. So one thing that we used to do in children's parties is make sure that everyone finished the game. Because a lot of the times it's actually the engagement part. It's not the losing per se. People can get over losing. Kids can get over losing. So adults can get over it.
There's so many gamification elements that don't involve competition. So like badges, you're not necessarily a loser if you don't. And if it's a birthday, you can get a badge. So, of course, this touches into like entitlement stuff on how we're parenting, right? But there's so many other gamification elements that are not necessarily competitive. So there are a lot of ways of gamifying processes and systems without really clear winners and losers. But again, just to echo a sentiment earlier, this is where I think design and iterating comes in. For example, leaderboard psychology. if, for example, it's a sales leaderboard and people are at 85 million, and then you're out of the top 10 and you're at 2,000 bucks, it's really very demotivating, and it'll cause you to give up when you see that. But look at what some leaderboards have been doing. They now take cohorts, and they if you're in like they think that the people above you and below you, and that's what they give you, not necessarily who's on top. So you're competing now with people in your cohort. And you'd see this in LinkedIn, in some of the other games. Most mobile games are now like that. And that's because it's analysis of the design. But that's where it's fascinating, right? There's no real, you have to take a look, and you have to design well.
Well, for me, no. Losing is sometimes a learning experience. What happens is that from that losing game, a terminology of project management, lessons learned. So nothing is wasted. It is something that you learn from.
Okay, I've been trying, because this gentleman's on my table, and I've been trying to convince him to ask a question all day, so he's brave. So we have to give him a round of applause because he wants to ask the question.
I'm sorry, everyone. I know I might be extending our session. I just wanted I wanted to ask the panel your thoughts about robotics and artificial intelligence, and how gamification plays a role in dealing with that technology. And I'm Raymond from ATR Asset Management.
Thank you, Raymond. Decal, come on.
The thing with AI, especially the iterative process, some of you might have noticed, even just playing Jungle Fire. So even just playing with that, there's so much math involved. If you can automate that in terms of the gamification process, and a lot of the times, even with a lot of games with high-level math and probability uses AI now and machine learning. But if you want to talk about AI and robotics and the influence in the future of work, talk to me after. I've done a lot of talks around that.
I mean, the world that we are going into and where we will be in a decade's time will just be, I mean, I don't know, maybe some of the panel can sit and talk, I won't be, able to do it. The fundamental thing at the moment is a lot of technology gets in the way. And as a result of that, it stops what you really want to achieve. So if you think of it, and I remember, again, I'm old enough to know the first time around of the dot-com era, and I was in the publishing industry, and everybody was like, whoa, this is 1999, first time around. It's like, oh, it's going to revolutionize, it's going to change everything. The reality was, anybody who wanted to download a page of information, you'd dial up a modem, and it would take you about half an hour to download a page. So it was ridiculous. Like, the concept was not wrong, but it was absolutely ridiculous. Now we're living in a world where the technology is invisible to the experience that I create, I get. A lot of technology at the moment is clunky, slow, it gets in the way. Few years, 10 years, some decades time, it'll be different. But not at the moment.
So I was at a Google Launchpad startup event a couple of months ago in San Francisco. There are 50 startups. They flew in 50 startups from all over the world. 3/4 of them are AI startups. A number of them are HR. It's here. And some of them are already giving services. They're AI companies in recruitment. There's a lot of that already that scour the social media pages and get your algorithm, what sort of employee you want, and then just gets you the right candidate. There are a bunch of HR analytics AI companies where you feed them a lot of unstructured data and they just churn out OD metrics. So I've heard they're also already beginning to modify Alexa If you have Alexa at home, that's Amazon, that small box you talk to at home. They're repurposing it into customer service sort of, which is scary for us here in the BPO capital of the world. How it affects games? So it's here. It'll have ramifications, I think, over the next few years, not over the next decade. How it affects games, I think, is very interesting, right? So, because we see it already. For example, when we go through Amazon or Facebook, it knows our browsing history. Netflix knows our browsing history. It learns, it shows us stuff that we want. Imagine that sort of concept in games. You go to the adventure that you like. You get to play with so because it knows you more. And I think that's where the exponential growth will happen with games. It can be now customized to who I am. Lot of ramifications, actually pretty exciting. But also obviously we have to do our own to adjust. Like there's no AI course right now in any college. Meanwhile, in the States, they're now trying, the more progressive schools are putting AI, data analytics. No school right now, none of the more popular schools at least, De La Salle has, no, so, but AI, konti pa lang eh, so just a few. So I think we need to prepare for that, as you mentioned earlier.
I think I'll put in a little bit more of a substantial answer. I'll wear the doomsday hat. 50%, a lot of the studies saying 50% of the jobs are going to be at risk within the next 5 years. 50% worldwide. You talk about a country that has 12% of the GDP in BPO industry, 12% working with OFWs, whose jobs are also at risk abroad. So that's going to be a huge turnaround over here. And we don't work in bubbles. So if those 50% of jobs are at risk, then what happens to the future of the workforce that you're responsible for? The trend now is lifelong learning. No longer is the trend that you finish your course, you're done, great, I have a job, I'm set forever. No, the new paradigm, and this is a paradigm that we can't resist. You need to attend seminars like this all the friggin' time. You have to stay up to date, because that's the only way you're going to keep your job. That is the only way you're going to keep your job. And you need to promote skills like collaboration, critical thinking. The World Economic Forum, I'm speaking from experience going to Davos, seeing what's happening in AI, it's creepy. Like, it's here. It's not that it's coming. It is here already, and it's just a matter of adoption. So we're not working in a bubble. So now the question is it connected to gamification? How can you incentivize learning? How can you, LinkedIn is already working on that. They're trying to find ways, and now it's about short courses, not even about 4-year degrees. So and maybe within the next 10 years, four-year degrees won't even matter. The question is how you're going to keep your workforce relevant, considering that some of their jobs might not even exist in 5 years.
I get you that it will probably be aspects of it 2 years, not 10. But here's the thing. In this room, there are 20 brilliant things that people can go out and do tomorrow, and we're not even doing the things that are available now without thinking of AI and robotics and whatever else. And so there is, it's kind of like, and in the context of our work environment, there are some of us that need to worry about futuristically that. There are other aspects of how do we optimize what we can do at the moment and do some of that. I mean, it is a fact that the bandwidth the world over doesn't exist until we got 5G, and that isn't going to be until 2020. You've got to have 5G, and once you've got that and all of the tests that are happening, and then the rate, what is it? It takes twice the amount of time people think it's going to take, but the impact is like exponential. So it's probably going to take longer than the soothsayers will say, of those people selling the technology, and but the impact will be so far-reaching. There's lots of things we can do today that we're not doing.
Just to put down my thoughts on this one, AI, whether it be the hardware or the software, whether it be robotics or artificial intelligence, when it comes to software, it simply and will always just remove the redundancy. What is important is for us, right now, right here, to improve the soft skills. The delineator of success of a company is more on the people experience. The soft skills, the communication skills, the strategic thinking, the problem solving, decision making. Those are when we, as human beings, play the forefront. We are the leaders of that stage. So, technical aspects, technical abilities to put together a car, how to put together, let's say, for example, a radio, and so forth and so on. Those may be, in the future, if ever, entirely mechanized. Okay. But still, the people skill, being able to tell and to socialize and to communicate will always remain with us humans.
So thank you. Wow. I think it's been a very interesting day for me. I hope it has been for you too. I think we all agree